The Commissioner of Health concluded a lavish speech about the winner of the award in the category County Physician of the Year. He waved his right hand wide, indicating the honoree to step up to the podium to receive the award. She was a stunningly beautiful red-haired woman who looked 10 years younger than her 33 years. Simone O'Reilly was a tall woman whose mane of red hair flowed down to her white shoulders like rings of fire falling onto ice. She was the most amazing woman in the room and also my wife. I'm James O'Reilly, known to my friends as Jimmy. I have been married to Simone for over 10 years. When we got married, I was 20 and she was 22. Simone often jokes that she married a child. But the truth is that in most cases, I am the older and more responsible party. From an early age, my wife studied to become a doctor. She cut herself off from the boys and parties part of her life and focused on becoming a doctor. So I found her an inexperienced 21-year-old virgin at the wrong frat party. She was dragged there by her roommate to celebrate their acceptance into medical school together. It was the spring semester of the school year. The Deltas were kind and invited the Sigmas to their spring party. 6 or 7 of my Sigma brothers decided to take advantage of the free beer offer and took me along. The party lasted until late. Early in the morning, I noticed 3 Deltas dragging a tall, red-headed girl into the back room. She was very drunk, but still resisted. Well, I couldn't just stand there, could I? I intercepted them and tried to convince the 3 big men, who were not in a good mood themselves. One big guy objected and swung at me. It was the last thing he did that evening. I only hit that idiot once. My fraternity mates stepped in and started smashing the Deltas' heads. I may have saved the girl, but in the end, she had to save us. Campus police showed up to break up the fight. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived, a couple dozen Deltas were already lying down, and my brothers were separating the rest. Yes, one of those Sigmas, the bad boys on campus, was me. The redhead had sobered up a little by this time and was convincing enough to convince the cops that we had saved her from sexual assault. After that, Simone, the redhead, and I went down the path that was supposed to end in marriage, and it happened barely a year later, just at the end of her first year of medical school. In terms of years, my wife was older and more mature in her career, but she was also younger than me in life experience. After her medical degree, my law degree, and 2 children, a year later she was named Doctor of the Year. My wife, a pediatric surgeon, earned this title after spending the previous year with Doctors Without Borders. From the very beginning, I realized how lucky I was to have bumped into Simone at that party. Randomness is a strange thing. Or was it a chance? Is there some divine force guiding our destiny? When we met, Simone was a potential, nerdy medical student waiting to emerge from her cocoon, a pupa that is about to turn into a butterfly. I wasn't the only one who thought so. My cynical fraternity brothers shook their heads at my good fortune. Why did an Irish idiot like Jimmy O'Reilly get a woman like that? They thought. After all, I was nothing special. Just average academically and athletically. On the other hand, I was, so to speak, much shrewder than the average college kid and very shrewd in my dealings with my fellows. Simone was the complete opposite. She believed in the highest good and nobility of human beings. I confess that I found this aspect of her character more attractive than her physical beauty. She was gorgeous, but as every one of my fraternity mates would attest, it was what was underneath her skin that looked like gold among the dross. The word altruism was coined to describe people like Simone. She didn't come into medicine for money, prestige, or security. Simone wanted to help others. There was no way she could stand by and watch another person suffer. If one of my awkward, shy fraternity brothers needed a date, Simone would set him up with one of her nerdy girlfriends. When my brothers drank too much, as they often did, Simone would wipe the vomit off them and help them into bed. After frequent fights, she lubricated their wounds with iodine and wrapped them in bandages. Unlike other girls, she never criticized, grumbled, or scolded anyone. She simply advised not to behave badly, like an indulgent mother. Guys were attracted to Simone by her appearance, but they loved her for her soul. My relationship with my future wife was somewhat different. As soon as Simone put her hand on mine, it stayed there forever. We became a couple. I was her first and only serious partner. We immediately became exclusive. Simone did not tolerate any hobbies. "We're together, a couple, right?" she asked. I wasn't a fool. I didn't argue with that. Having been chosen by some divine intervention to be with Simone, I was astute enough to know when to take advantage. And, of course, Simone captured my heart. It happens to her. If there is even a drop of goodness in your soul, you cannot help but love Simone. So that Thursday afternoon, I snuck out of the office early to attend a meeting of the County Medical Society. I wasn't invited. The hospital administrator was the wife of a district official, and when I went in to register the document, he congratulated me on my wife's award. I pretended that I knew everything. My wife didn't tell me about the reward or the meeting. As is her custom, she kept her family and professional lives separate. Thus, I was ruining the novel. Normally, her not inviting me to a medical association meeting would not have raised any questions in my mind. However, the fact that she didn't mention the award made my eyebrows rise. I wanted to see her receive the award and hear her speech. I'm very proud of Simone, but after returning from abroad, she became distant and reserved. Our former warm closeness was replaced by winter coolness. At first, I saw it as a result of her fatigue. She returned to us an emaciated shadow of her former strong personality. But while Simone regained her vigor, we did not regain our former passion. The woman returned, but the wife was still traveling somewhere. Simone seemed to have restored her relationship with our daughters, Vicky, 8, and Beth, 6. But there seemed to be some barrier with her husband that she could not or would not overcome. For 3 months, I waited for my wife to return to me. I missed her and the warm, loving relationship we had. Something changed our relationship, but I didn't know what exactly. I knew nothing that could explain the distance between me and my wife. I quietly entered the large banquet hall of the Gideon Hotel. Simone hasn't started speaking yet. The hall was filled with almost 1,500 people. I sat at the back of the room next to the bar set up for cocktails. As the performances began, the bartender interrupted the service, but the 2 tall, handsome men were still leaning on the bar, sipping their drinks. I recognized one of them as Tony Caruso, MD, a gynecologist at Memorial Hospital where Simone worked. The second had a dark complexion and a more cunning appearance, but he was a handsome fellow. He was wearing an expensive, tailored suit of European cut. I assumed the fancy suit was also a doctor. He had the appearance of a player, just like Caruso. Not being very good, Dr. Caruso always, when he met a young nurse, wanted to put her to bed, and the wedding ring did not stop him. I knew of several cases when he approached Simone, one of which was right in front of me. She always fought back, but he kept coming like the Energizer Bunny. I stood behind them at the back of the bar. They stood facing the hall, like me, and obviously did not see me, but I was close enough to hear their conversation without straining. "I want to get some of this for myself," said the man in a fashionable suit, nodding towards my wife. Simone approached the podium to begin her speech. "Don't let the red hair fool you." "That bitch is frigid," Tony replied. "Maybe there once was, but no longer. I heard she was having quite a blast in Africa. She really was very hot," the second man said. "Well, it would have been a big change, but it was there," Tony said. "Yes, but once they try it on the side, they never really stop," Dr. Slippery Guy told Tony. "Do you want to argue?" said Tony. "Certainly. How about we double the amount you owe me for that little renovation job I did?" Mr. Slippery said. "We agreed, and to make it more interesting, I'll try to hit on her myself," Tony said, and they both laughed smugly. At this moment, my wife spoke. "I want everyone to know how incredibly honored I am to receive this award from my professional peers. But to be honest, I have to say that you gave it to the wrong person. This award is given to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for humanity. My work with Doctors Without Borders was not hard for me. It was others who made the real sacrifice. My daughters, who were left without their mother for 14 months, my husband, who became a single parent during that time, and all the family and friends who came to my aid while I was gone. We so often forget about those who stay and support the work on the ground. They make everyday, unnoticed contributions. As I accept this award on behalf of my family and friends, I want them and you to know that I appreciate not only their sacrifice, but all the tens of thousands of people who have been helped by Doctors Without Borders. We, as healthcare professionals and our patients, owe a great debt to all those families who have been left without a husband, wife, brother, sister, or child for an extended period of time to bring medical benefit to those who need it most, but least can get it. It is therefore with great humility and deep honor that I accept this award for myself and the other volunteer families. When Simone finished, the crowd stood and there was thunderous applause. "I'm glad you heard that," someone said in my ear. I turned and saw Claire Hudson. She was going down on her tiptoes. At 63 meters tall, she had to stand on tiptoes to speak into my ear. Claire was my wife's preferred surgical nurse. Simone loves having Claire next to her in the operating room. Claire is a mother of 3, but you'd never think it. At just over 30 years old, she had the figure of a 20-year-old girl, and not a single gray strand in her raven hair. She was one of those women who, in common slang, is called a MILFA. But she was married to one of the best men I have ever known. Declan Hudson was the best diesel mechanic in our part of the world. If you wanted the best, you went to Hudson. Declan, who everyone called Dake, was a powerful man. Prematurely bald, he gave the impression of a movie tough guy, but had the disposition of a kitten. Claire wore the pants in the family. Together, they were the couple Simone and I were closest to, friends who we often invited over and whose parties we always went to. Our house was often filled with their 3 boys and our 2 girls. This was the case during Simone's absence. I wondered what Simone was doing in Africa without Claire. "I'm very proud of her," I answered Claire. "She loves you very much," Claire said. I looked over to where the bartender was refilling drinks for Tony Curoso and his friend. They grabbed their refreshments and headed out into the crowd, which was beginning to settle down again. "Who is this with Dr. Curoso?" I asked. Oh, this is Dr. Eshe Faraji, our new chief of surgery," Claire said. I detected hesitation in Claire's voice. Sometimes being a criminal lawyer is not a good thing. It was too obvious to me that Claire was hiding something personal. I ignored it because I saw my wife receiving an award, and it was time to play to daddy and pick up my daughters from school. "I have to go," I told Claire, looking at my watch. "Tell Simone that I heard her speech." "Definitely," Claire said as I turned to leave. In the car, on the way to school, I reflected on Dr. Faraji's accusations against my wife. When we met, the woman who would one day be named the state's sexiest doctor was the female equivalent of a nerd. She was a virgin, like me. Being called the shrewdest asshole on campus didn't make me any better than the average guy with girls. With Simone, it was different. After our first kiss, I put my brain aside for later and never allowed unkind thoughts to come between us. Simone was the daughter of a banker and an excellent student. If it weren't for a few drunk frat boys, we would never have met. We studied at the same university, but in completely different fields. She was an excellent student and was preparing to enter medical school, and I was a sophomore and undecided on the choice of specialty. I was doing pretty well academically, but I wasn't anywhere near her league. We dated throughout the school year, and a week after she graduated, we consummated our romance with a night of sex. When Simone was in medical school, she had an apartment in Albany, near the medical center. Dad paid his living expenses, but even his wealth was threatened by medical school tuition. As a result, Simone took out a large student loan. I became a regular guest in Simone's bed. Simone began studying medicine, and I was laying cables for an independent company that subcontracted the electrical grid. At every opportunity, I dropped by her place to disrupt my beloved studies. In hindsight, we should have been more careful. Her parents heard the rumors and were furious. I think Mom and Dad, but mostly Mom, were unprepared for their college-graduated daughter to become a woman. In the end, Whether we were ready or not, we were engaged by Christmas and married the following June. I was a junior and a married man, but still relatively carefree and undecided about my major. Everything changed during my senior year. I've never worried about unprotected sex. Simone took care of this. We were healthy and monogamous. Simone took the pills, but I don't think she did then. At the beginning of her second year of medical school, she announced her pregnancy. "I thought you were taking pills," I said. "Stopped last month. This way I can have a baby between semesters." "But what then? Everything has already been decided." "Don't worry," she said. To some extent, she was right. Both sets of parents were desperate for grandchildren. Simone was an only child, and Mrs. Mercer wanted grandchildren. My parents were in the same despair since my older sister, so to speak, came out of the closet. She admitted to being gay. To me, Tara has always been a big sister. Her height is 1.80 meters, which is 5 centimeters lower than I am now, but as a child she was always taller. She was called beautiful, and she had no shortage of male attention. In high school, Tara had what was called a reputation. Well, you know, that pretty girl who is not the easiest to climb, but still won't leave a guy in trouble. Tara was never without a date at a dance, but she never managed to get a permanent boyfriend. My mom told her friends how Tara played on the field and kept her options open. I think that's how it was. When my sister went to college, she dressed more and more like a cute guy. Her hair was becoming shorter and more boyish. For my mom, it was just a temporary phase of life, until the day Tara brought her friend home to meet the family. When Tara retired from having children, my parents turned to their daughter-in-law. Simone did not let them down. Little Victoria Tara. Louise O'Reilly weighed 3.7 kilograms at birth. My sister became the eldest aunt and moved in with us. At the time, she was working as a probationary officer for the city police. Tara and I managed to remove the potential doctor from using about most of the parenting responsibilities. Simone has one big flaw. At the slightest opportunity, she will try to do everything. I firmly believe that you cannot be a medical student and a full-time mother of a newborn. Simone, of course, did not agree. If I had not intervened, she would have been exhausted and, in the end, would not have coped either as a student or as a mother. This became a turbulence and a pattern in our marriage. Simone fought to be the superwoman and mom, and I played the role of the strict husband and dad who set boundaries. It was, you study, and Tara and I do Vicky and household chores. In the end, my sister and I came to a system that, even Simone could understand, was the best for Vika. And it was Tara who pushed me to the idea of getting a legal education. "You'll never make a police officer, Jimmy, but maybe a lawyer," Tara said. It was a difficult period. I was working at a cable company, caring for my daughter, and going to law school. I got through this thanks to Tara and Simone. Oddly enough, thanks to the difficulties I faced, I became a better person. Simone and Tara were at my law school graduation, although neither of them could stay for the celebration my parents threw. Simone and Tara worked the evening shift. We did not know that 6 years later, it would be me who would defend Tara from false accusations made in order to get rid of the gay sergeant. Tara never had it easy in the male-dominated police force. As a result, we entered into a settlement agreement with an apology, and Tara opened her own security company. On the other hand, I made enemies among almost all active officers, but it was worth it. By that time, baby Beth had arrived and life had returned to normal. Simone completed her residency in surgery, and I had a small internship. We were happy. And then Kevin McFarlane returned from Liberia. Kevin, an emergency physician, was Simone's friend from medical school. Kevin returned with stories of work done in Africa. As doctors should, I think, in an emergency, I would hope that someone else would be available. He was an excellent academic student who had no talent for medicine, which I came to regard as an art rather than a science. By the time Kevin returned, Simone was a board-certified pediatric surgeon. This is one of the highest-paid medical specialties. Simone and I just started to get out of the financial basement. She made 3 times more than me, but my wife was not motivated by money. "I can't get what Kevin said out of my head," she whispered in my ear after sex. "No," I said. "You won't go." "I know. I have too many responsibilities. I need to think about girls. I'm not free. And I'm not so crazy as to let my wife leave and die," I answered. "They wouldn't have killed me, and I could have done so much good. It's just 1 year. My wife asked me to help her play Doctors Without Borders for a year. She knew there was nothing I couldn't handle. I'm like, give me a problem, and I'll find a solution." This made me a good, if not always honest, lawyer. Simone also knew that I would do anything for her. But could I let her put herself in danger? "It's too dangerous," I said. I listened to Kevin and knew that what he had to say would be like catnip to my wife. I made inquiries and didn't like anything I heard. The group goes where others don't go. MSF is deployed to war zones in Afghanistan, Yemen, and Syria. Their targets are victims of airstrikes intended for others, and then there will be the Democratic Republic of Congo, where violence was deliberately directed against health workers. Everything told me that I should talk Simone out of going, but I knew that ultimately I wouldn't be able to do that. Another woman would have been content with a successful career and family, but Simone could never be just another woman or a doctor. There were people who needed help, children who needed her special skills. She had to go, and I knew it. I could have stopped her. Perhaps I should have stopped her. But I loved her. And when you really love someone, you can feel their needs even more than your own. So in the end, I helped her. I hugged our girls as they sat on the living room couch, and Simone knelt in front of us, explaining why she had to go help children in Africa. When Simone announced to the rest of her family that she would be leaving her surgical residency for at least a year to take a job with Doctors Without Borders, it was Tara who was the first to come to my aid. By then, Vicky was 7 years old, and Beth, short for Elizabeth, 5. Tara brought Lisa to the table. My sister is the very definition of the word baby girl. She had once been a very beautiful girl, but now she had turned into a boyish creature. Still beautiful, but there was no way she could be mistaken for a heterosexual. Tara prefers her women to be feminine, and Lisa is a 100% feminine. She is what I think is called a feminine gay girl. Lisa is petite, one of those petite women who can wear anything and look good doing it. Very small in stature, with long blonde hair all along her back. The kind of girl who looks more feminine, even in jeans. When Simone went to Africa, Lisa became a feminine influence for my daughters, buying them clothes and watching Frozen and Pocahontas with them. Tara and I supported our father's position. I needed help. With my wife leaving, I lost not only my spousey, but also my income. My wife's new income was only enough to cover her student loan bills. I had to pay my loans, mortgage, and house bills. The average criminal lawyer is lucky if, after all expenses, he has $50,000 left over a year. When Simone left, I was earning $60 because I spent every free hour looking for new things to do. I think I wrote a will for every family member and friend I had. But he mainly hunted in city courts, looking for clients who were driving under the influence of alcohol, disturbing public order, or committing obscenity. We survived, and even thrived, but I couldn't have done it without Tara and Lisa. Most of all, I was worried. The news from the Democratic Republic of Congo has never been good. I didn't want Simone to leave at all. Why her family was not enough for her, I never understood. I also did not understand how a mother of small children could so decisively put herself in danger. Everything I had learned about the Congo told me it was a place to be avoided at all costs. The first 2 months of her absence, she was in France on an internship. We kept in good contact. Every day is a phone call. 2, sometimes 3 emails a day to me and the girls. For the next 2 months, everything was exactly the same, but then it changed. There were calls maybe once a week, and occasionally letters. Changes did not happen slowly. Everything happened somehow at once. There was a dramatic shift, and then things moved on. Letters began to arrive once every 2 weeks, and calls once a month. Mostly she talked to girls. Something happened during her 3rd month in the Congo. I never found out what exactly. All I knew was that my wife never came back to me. I was celibate for 14 months. But was Simone just as abstinent? I knew how slutty medical staff could be. Was my wife having extramarital sex while I stayed home and took care of the children? Is Dr. Faraji making this all up? Or does he have knowledge that I lacked? I was worried about my wife's safety, but shouldn't I be worried about her fidelity? When I pulled up in my Honda CR-V, my daughters were already waiting at the curb. Vicky became a responsible older sister. She held Beth's hand and waited patiently on the side of the road for me to arrive. Being motherless has made my daughters more responsible and less dependent. "Hi, Dad," Vicky said, opening the door and helping her sister enter. "What are we having for dinner?" Beth asked, buckling herself into the only seat left in the car. "I think Aunt Tara will bring liver and onions," I teased. "No, he won't. Lisa won't let her," Beth insisted. "Dad," Vicky begged. "Well, you know your mom will be late, and Aunt Tara really likes liver." "Ugh," the girls said in unison. When we arrived home, the girls burst from the garage into the kitchen. They protested against the liver when they saw boxes of pizza sitting on the kitchen table. Aunt Lisa assured them that she would never allow Aunt Tara to feed them liver. Simone didn't come home for dinner, but I didn't expect her to come. The meeting would be followed by a cocktail reception for the big shots, and Simone would use the opportunity to argue for greater support for Doctors Without Borders. She arrived home around 8, just as I was giving the girls a bath. Tara and Lisa stayed until I put the girls to bed. They said they wanted to talk to us about something. After the girls had settled down, Tara took out the bottle of wine she had bought and settled down on the sofa in the living room. "I want you to be the first to know that I asked Lisa to marry me," Tara began. Simone was the first to congratulate, and a second later I followed. Even though I knew how close the two women were, they took me by surprise. "Continue," Lisa pushed. Well, the reason we're getting married is because your sister wants to say that we are going to get married and have children," Lisa told me. "Okay, well, you will become happy parents," I said. Simone fidgeted restlessly next to me. I was missing something that all three women instinctively understood. "Jim, we want you to be the biological father," Tara said. This made me a little taken aback, but before I could come to my senses, Lisa intervened. "It's not just that you are Tara's biological brother. I want my children to have a father like I know you. I can't imagine a better man to be the father of our children. We only ask that you help fertilize," said Lisa. They puzzled me, and I felt an icy cold emanating from Simone. "Can you give me time to think?" I was on the safe side. "Of course," they agreed, and we continued to discuss their wedding plans until they left. Simone was sitting on the edge of our bed. She was wearing an old terry robe over a closed nightgown. Before leaving for Africa, she slept with me naked. Now she was hiding her body from me. I saw that she was worried. "What do you think about it?" she asked. "About what?" "You know, about donating to Tara and Lisa," she said. "Actually, I don't quite understand. Slightly flattered, as you'd expect." "What were you thinking?" "Are we really so far apart that you can't understand how I feel about this?" "Well, I didn't think you'd be happy, but you didn't say no, and this is just donating your seed." I thought, what would this mean for the girls? I don't think anyone planned to tell them this until they were adults. But what if something happens to Lisa and Tara? These will be your children. If the worst happens, they will become my children, regardless of who impregnated them. Tara is my sister. Our children are her nieces. She and Lisa proved that it meant a lot to them while you were gone. We owe them a lot. It will be difficult for me to refuse them such a small request, I said. Simone didn't look happy. "I want to think and talk about this when I'm not so tired," she said. "That's good. Go and get some sleep. We'll talk tomorrow evening." I cannot. Tomorrow evening I promised to go out from work with my employees to celebrate. Today I received an award that Claire said you know about. "What did you do this evening?" Simone didn't seem pleased with my question. Today was a holiday for management. I met with the hospital's executive committee after the awards ceremony. I may be offered a leadership position. Oh, and when did you plan to celebrate with your family? Please, Jimmy, don't be like that. I'm doing the best I can, she said, pausing to catch her breath. Everything seems strange. When you leave like I did, you expect that when you return, everything will be the same. But that's not true. Everyone went ahead. Even worse, you are different and you can't do anything about it. You've seen things. You've had experience. Not all of it is bad, but some of it is so terrible. She suddenly began to sob. I walked up to the bed. He hugged her and pulled her towards him. For a moment, Simone and I became the same, a husband and his wife working on what happened to her. But then the moment passed and she pulled away, and the curtain fell. That night I went to bed with the doctor of the year, not my wife. But the night was not without sex. Like many other evenings after Simone returned, we had intercourse. This has become a habit, and Simone started it all. In the first weeks after returning, Simone was a little hesitant when it came to sex. After a long lull, I was impatient to resume marital relations. Simone acted hesitant at first, as if she wasn't sure of me. But everything quickly changed. Within 2 weeks of returning home, Simone became very aggressive in bed. This change was unsettling. When we first got married, we bought the book The Joys of Sex and worked through it. Simone had never been an adventurer and hated giving me pleasure, but loved receiving it. After Africa, Simone became a tigress in bed and, as a prelude to sex, resorted to pleasurable attacks that made her heart skip a beat. If before it was a lot of once or twice a week, now it was every night and twice a day, if our weekends coincided. But there was no more love. I had a clear feeling that all we were doing was having sex. We excited each other, as if Simone had some kind of obsessive craving that demanded satisfaction every night. The wife I knew was gone, replaced by a surrogate with too much sex. My morning started at 5:45. After getting up, showering, and shaving, I woke up the girls. They were good little soldiers and went to the bathroom themselves while I got dressed. When I was ready to start the day, I helped the girls get dressed. It was a routine that we had perfected over the past year. Breakfast was eaten and lunch was prepared. We were heading to the garage. I took the girls to school and then went to the magistrate's court. Most days went like this, but on Fridays it was earlier because I needed to consult with the assistant district attorney before Friday's magistrate court. The judge officially took the bench at 9:30 but rarely sat down before 10 wire, and then only if the assistant district attorney was ready. She came at 8 to begin making deals, which were blessed by the judge from the bench. Simone appeared in a robe just as the girls and I were leaving. "Kiss Mom goodbye," I said. "Bye, Mom," they said, kissing Mom on the cheek. "How about a kiss from my husband?" Simone asked when I was almost out the door. I turned and kissed her briefly on the lips. "I won't be too late tonight," she said. I left Simone knowing she would run 3 miles before work. Another change after her African trip. The old Simone did Pilates and yoga, and the new woman ran 3 miles every weekday morning and 5 miles on the weekends. I think she was in the best shape of her entire life, and of course she looked great. All this seemed to only increase the distance between us. In the magistrate's court, the assistant prosecutor sat in a tiny room off to the side. There was enough space for a small table, behind which sat a pretty young woman, an assistant prosecutor. There was one empty chair for the defense lawyer. My colleagues from the lower ranks of the criminal defense profession lined up in the hall. I knew them all, but not very well. We were a friendly, cheerful company. My criminal defense colleagues were oblivious to my somewhat dubious reputation. It's hard to keep your hands clean when representing those who work on the dirty side of the street. Representing your client vigorously sometimes means breaking the rules. I may have influenced several witnesses, told the client to get rid of some evidence before the police thought of seizing it. I was a good lawyer, but not always a good citizen. When it was finally my turn to argue with the assistant prosecutor, I prepared my arguments. I had 5 cases. They all stemmed from police surveilling a local bar the previous Friday evening. The bar owner didn't like the idea of local cops keeping tabs on his patrons. especially since no arrests had been made for drunk driving. Every driver stopped after leaving his establishment had an alcohol level below the legal limit. However, 5 fines were issued for disorderly conduct and drunk driving. Before I could open my mouth, the assistant prosecutor handed me her paper with the disposition of the prosecution. "Orn," she said, referring to the designation of refusal to consider a violation. "Oran is nothing more than the dismissal of charges, the best thing you can do on your first appearance." "Which one exactly?" I stuttered. "All 5, she said. "Look carefully at the charge sheet." She pointed to the initials next to each client's name. The letters SK were written very clearly. The prosecutor was Stanislaus Katsaros, known as Stan. He was very proud of his Greek heritage. As the saying goes, beware of Greeks who bring gifts, but don't look a gift horse in the mouth. It was certainly a gift that just brought me a fee of $800 in each of the 5 cases, $4,000. The question, however, was, what does Stan want? Politicians do nothing without a purpose. If Stan wanted a favor, he didn't ask for it. The pretty assistant district attorney looked at me and shrugged. Obviously, she no more understood what was happening than I did. I returned to my office at 10 in the morning. June was waiting for me there. June is one of my employees, a 28-year-old woman with 5 children. The eldest girl is 14. The remaining 4 are less than 10. The 5 children have 3 fathers, and June has never married. She does a good job of managing my calendar and delivering documents. She would never have made it as a paralegal or secretary in a big firm. But I am engaged in individual practice and everything suits me. Every day, June spends a significant amount of time on the phone dealing with family issues with her mother, who lives with her and looks after June's children. "Prosecutor Stanislaus Katsaros wants to see you," June said. "When?" I asked. "It's about 3 o'clock in his office this afternoon." Doesn't waste time, I thought. But what might the prosecutor want from me? Stan met me in his office along with his chief assistant, Betty Gray. There have always been rumors about Stan and Betty. The prosecutor was over 50, and Betty was in her early 40s. And if she was not classically beautiful, she was still a pretty, lonely woman. Despite the rumors, I knew for sure that their relationship was purely professional. Firstly, Stan was married to a real Greek beauty, brought from the old country, and who was 20 years his junior. On the other hand, Betty has several young men with whom she dates alone. Few people know about Betty's stable, but there's little that can be hidden from my investigative sister. Stan and Betty sat me down on an old, worn leather couch in the DA's inner office and offered me coffee. When his cup was half full of cream and sugar, Stan added coffee and began to explain the reason for calling our meeting. "Have you heard the allegations regarding the Van Patten Correctional Facility?" he began. Of course I heard it. Even my mind, busy with household chores, could not miss such a juicy scandal. Our local correctional facility began life as a minimum security prison for male inmates. Most of its former male inmates served only a few months before being released, often remaining behind bars only for nights and weekends. Lawsuits over overcrowding at women's prisons to the south and west have forced the state to convert Van Patten into a medium security prison for female inmates. The conversion required nothing more than erecting a fence and stringing razor-sharp wire. Women's prisons are virtually unguarded, as no one has ever heard of an escape from a women's prison. The current scandal is not about security, but about sex. Sex in prison is a commodity, and it is more common than outside. It is simply rampant in women's institutions, a fact compounded by the federal government's insistence on equal employment opportunity. Because of their size and numbers, all opportunities for advancement existed only in male institutions. At the women's facilities, work was easier and safer, but fewer positions meant fewer promotions. As a result, female officers tended to work in male-dominated facilities. There were exceptions related to geography. Most officers came from local communities, and getting a position closer to home when appointed on the basis of seniority was what most officers aspired to. Thus, The staffing of male and female officers in women's institutions was approximately 50-50. The civilian staff at Van Patten Penitentiary was predominantly female, but military personnel were evenly divided between the sexes. The current problem arose from complaints of sexual abuse of female prisoners by male officers. These complaints were filed with the State Commission on Corrections. COC is not the Department of Corrections. The department operates prisons. The commission is a supervisory body created after the Attica riot in 1971. The commission is a toothless watchdog. She reports abuse but has no way to correct the situation. The local district attorney is handling the prosecution. Sexual conduct between an officer and an inmate is a Class D felony, at a minimum. Stan Katsaros is the arm of the law who is responsible for taking action on complaints investigated by the commission, if necessary. However, corrections officers tend to be conservative Republicans. They have a strong union and tend to come from large families living in close communities. In a county like Van Patten, prosecuting corrections officers is close to political suicide. Most prosecutions of correctional officers, when they occur, tend to be federal. A United States attorney is appointed and serves a larger jurisdiction. New York has only 4 federal districts with 4 U.S. attorneys, but 62 counties, each with its own district attorney. The local district attorney typically only prosecutes inmates or civilian personnel accused of committing a crime on prison grounds. Uniformed personnel are primarily subject to federal prosecution. However, no federal prosecutor will willingly pursue hopeless cases. Convicting someone, even if there is strong evidence, of committing a sex crime with an incarcerated offender is nearly impossible. The U.S. attorney brushed off a COC report detailing widespread sexual activity at Van Patten Prison. Now the state is putting pressure on Stan to take action. Southern liberals and northern religious conservatives were equally offended by the idea of sex behind prison walls. So, yes, I heard about Stan's problem, but I didn't see how it affected me. I know about the COC report, I said. Stan wasted no time getting down to business. The governor wants to appoint a special prosecutor, he said, pausing to let me realize this. At first, I didn't want to agree, but I was ready to agree if I was allowed to tell the name of this person. I looked back and forth between Stan and Betty. I couldn't believe he was seriously considering me, or that the governor would agree. And what did the governor say? I asked. He agrees, as long as it is a Democrat who is not associated with law enforcement or my office. I checked this morning and you're still registered as a Democrat. It sounded somehow false. I barely knew Stan Katsaros. We communicated only through his subordinates and the relationship was hostile. And yet, he proposed me for an important political post. Of course, my resume was suitable. I was a Democrat, although not an active one, and, thanks to my sister, had experience, standing up to the local police department. However, it did not pass the smell test. Stan must have seen my hesitation because he pulled out his main weapon. You may be concerned about the issue of compensation. I offered the governor $175 an hour, and he agreed. Next, you don't have to worry about payment. The state will bear all costs as part of my agreement with the governor, Stan said with a sly smile. Lawyers' fees are a strange animal. You can charge $350 an hour, but clients rarely pay the entire bill. In criminal practice, you try to get as big an advance as possible, knowing that this may be the only money you will see. If the client stops paying the bill, you remain on the case until the judge releases you, which is rare. Special prosecutors are another matter. There is no prepayment here. The bill is sent to a government agency, usually the county. County legislatures are never enthusiastic about paying extra bills for prosecutors when they are already paying the DA's salary and expenses. But if the state pays, it's just a matter of filing a bill. You may have to wait 3 to 6 months to get the money, but you will get it. I was already doing the math in my head. There will be a minimum of 3,000 hours, and at $175 an hour, that's over $500,000 over the next 2 years. Even with significantly increased office expenses, this could add $150,000 to my bottom line each year. For a solo practitioner like me, who earned only $60,000 last year, this was a fortune. It was too good to be true, but also too good to pass up. Betty outlined the appointment process for the governor's office. She had a draft of my biography and a recommendation from Stan. She suggested that we spend time together over the next 2 days to put everything together. Hopefully, we can agree on an appointment by next week. I left Stan's office in a kind of daze. I returned to my office only at 4 o'clock. Tara was waiting for me. She began to talk about what brought her as soon as the door to my personal office closed. "Lisa and I don't want to put pressure on you," she began. "It's clear that Simone is not happy. We don't want to create problems in your marriage. You and Lisa are not the cause of my family problems, and what you ask is fair, considering what you both have done for our daughters. Simone will come to her senses. Give her some time," I said. "And yet," she began, but I interrupted her. "Put this aside. I need your help in a professional matter." I explained Stan Katsaros's proposal. Tara was even more skeptical than I was, but for different reasons. "Are you proposing to prosecute correctional officers based on the testimony of easily accessible girls?" she asked. "Because I guarantee that every one of your complaining witnesses will have on their record a charge of vagrancy, disorderly conduct, or indecent behavior, or at best, a failed molestation charge. At worst, their cases will include charges of servicing men," Tara lectured, returning to the police officer she was at heart. "However, technically, it is rape in the 3rd degree. A person is considered incapable of giving consent if he, A, is under 17 years of age, or B, mentally retarded, or C, mentally incompetent, or D, physically helpless, or E, placed under the guardianship or supervision of the State Department of Corrections." I read from the criminal code. "That's right, and all we need is a jury of 12 to get a guilty verdict," Tara said. "No, I need my investigator to get irrefutable evidence," I replied. "This is all?" "Yes, but I will help. I intend to handle what appears to be a rather bungled case, while you work in the background, gathering the real evidence. I will look after you so you can work. So I need you to start immediately. It was a very difficult task, perhaps impossible. But all I had to lose was my less than stellar reputation. The day was important for me, but my parents didn't rest. I still had to pick up my daughters, feed them, and entertain them until bedtime. They must have had a big day, too. By 9 o'clock, I put them to bed and put them to sleep. I washed the dishes, tidied up the kitchen, and put away the remains of dinner, and then settled down to wait for Simone. I think I had some vague idea of getting things sorted out with Simone before moving on to the special counsel's cases. Then there may not be time to discuss everything. I must have fallen asleep on the sofa, woke up after midnight. A check of the house showed that my wife was still not home. It was already well after 1:30, when I heard the sound of a car approaching. I looked out the living room window. The garage light was on, and I saw a Porsche sports car in our driveway. My wife drives a BMW. Simone was returning home without a car, and someone gave her a ride. There were 2 people in the front seat of the Porsche, a woman and a man, but I couldn't see them. She leaned over and kissed him. He pulled her close to him, but then they parted, and she shook her head. She got out of the car and walked towards the house. There was enough light to recognize my wife, and read the license plate on the Porsche. Apparently, they didn't see me through the window. The light from the garage was shining into their eyes, and the lights in the house were turned off. I returned and sat on the sofa when Simone entered the house. When she turned on the lights in the house, she was amazed to see me sitting there. "Are you awake?" she said as the Porsche pulled out of the driveway. "Did someone give you a ride home?" I asked, as if I didn't know. "Yes, I left my car at the hospital and came with Claire," she said. There was an awkward pause as I stared at her. "Well, I need to get some sleep. Are you coming?" she asked, turning and heading up the stairs to the bedrooms on the 2nd floor. She moved quickly and was already undressing when I entered our bedroom. "You're very late," I said. "Yes, sorry. We had a good time." "I was hoping we could talk," I said. Tomorrow when we rest, she said. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and slipped into the bathroom to get ready for bed. In the morning, when I woke up, she was no longer there. It was her day off and she was on one of her long morning runs. After lunch, we came with our boys and everything we needed for an impromptu barbecue, Claire and S. Everyone was busy grilling and taking care of the kids, so Simone and I didn't get a chance to talk. When we finally got the kids to bed, Dake called me aside with a couple of beers. "How are you?" he asked. "I think it's okay." "Why are you asking?" I answered. "Claire said you two were having trouble, adjusting." "About?" And what gave her this idea? My question made Deke nervous. It became clear to me that he had a mission to lure me out. "Just. So are you okay?" "No, it's not okay. And Claire knows it. That's why she made you ask," I said. Sorry, but she's worried and I'm probably worried too. You were so close. Maybe you should go somewhere. For example, to a psychologist or somewhere else." Dake was genuinely concerned and was clearly directed towards the embrasure. His wife controlled his marriage, I knew that, and Claire was close to Simone. So it was Claire or Simone who was feeling me out through Dake. For my part, I think it's a bit of a shock after Simone left. And if she spends more time with her family, everything will get better. Dake accepted this. I wondered if the women would agree. Sunday could have been a day of rest and the Lord's Day. But Simone was on duty at the hospital. That's why we didn't talk that weekend. Despite what I told Dake, I was upset about the kiss my wife gave to the man driving the Porsche. But I had little time to think because the first thing on Monday was the governor's office calling and asking for my resume. After lunch, they made an appointment for the next day at the Capitol. The room on the second floor of the Capitol building was cramped. The woman who rose from the table was young, no more than 20. I noticed her long brown hair and big brown eyes. She was very attractive and dressed expensively. Everything spoke of wealth, Ivy Leagues, and connections. "Thank you for coming, Mr. O'Reilly," she said. "I'm Carrie Wilson. My interview apparently was not with the governor, but with a junior aide. Please take a seat. It won't take much time." "I just have a few questions," she said, waving me towards a chair. Sentenced to 10 years, she served 5. After her release, she joined the Franciscan Sisters. The aspiring nun publicly confessed her sins. Her testimony detailed who did what and when. She seemed like an ideal witness, but she refused to testify. All she wanted was for what she was seeing to stop. She did not want sinners to be punished, but rather to be forgiven. Martyrs make poor witnesses. I rejected the possibility of forcing the nun to testify. A hostile victim turns an administrative process into a criminal one, and the last thing the prosecutor needs is for the victim to ask for forgiveness and make excuses from the witness stand. The commission's other witnesses were another group of released criminals, women much less reformed than Sister Teresa. All the other commission witnesses had one thing in common. All complaints were old. No one could witness anything that had happened in the last 5 years. The statute of limitations for third-degree rape is only 5 years. In essence, their cases were frozen. It didn't make sense. Why bother with an investigation if the main witness won't testify and the other complaint is stale? Once again, there seemed to be a hidden agenda, something unsaid. I needed to talk to Tara and figure out how to move from the old accusations to the current problem. The rapists were repeat offenders. Perhaps my sister can make a connection. I left the COC office puzzled but determined. Tara couldn't tell me much. Yes, there were cases of sex between officers and prisoners, but not as much as one might expect. Van Patten's real problem was that it was understaffed and overcrowded. "But I'm working on a new lead," Tara said. "About?" "Yes, remember Nancy Silverman?" "Short, obnoxious, ultra-feminist lawyer," I said. "Well, shorty, but obviously you know who I mean." "She says she might have a lead for me," Tara said, and we left it for later. My next step will be to visit the crime scene, Van Patten Penitentiary. But before that, Simone had the day off. And that evening, her mom was going to take our girls to see the latest Disney movie. So I was going home to meet my wife and sort out our problems. I checked the Porsche license plate and, unsurprisingly, it belonged to Esha Faraji, MD. My wife and I needed to discuss some issues. Simone was waiting for me at home. I found her in the living room dressed in a green teddy and stilettos. Green certainly suited this redhead. The silk and lace teddy did not hide anything important. My rowdy fraternity brothers used to ask if the hair color was the same on top and bottom. Actually, it is not. She stood in our living room like a goddess in her green silk. Her 10-centimeter heels made her taller than me. She handed me a filled martini glass. After returning home, martini became Simone's favorite drink. She used to rarely drink, but that has changed. An alarming fact, considering how promiscuous my wife gets when she drinks. Seeing my indecisiveness, she said, "Not what you expected. I thought we were going to talk." "We'll talk, but later." We drank. The drink was strong. She then led me by my tie up the stairs to our bedroom. There she began to undress me, and when I tried to help, she spanked my hands. "Don't take my job away," she said. Pulling down my shorts, she knelt down and yanked my boxers off and began to work. I tried to relax and turn off the part of my mind that wanted to ask all the uncomfortable questions. It was my wife, and she could act like easily accessible, but she was clearly playing a game that was aimed at bridging the gap between us. We're on the bed got down to dirty sex. Then she snuggled up to me and dozed off for a minute. This was the Simone I knew, relaxed and sleepy after sex. And this was the wife I knew, warm and happy next to me. I did not sleep. I was waiting. This was just a prelude. The questions were ready and the answers were probably well rehearsed, but I was eager to hear them, and at the same time I wasn't sure I wanted to. I was caught between the need to know and the fear of knowing. "Hey, baby, did I fall asleep?" she said. I pulled her tightly towards me. "Yes," I said. I love this woman so much. That's nice. It's such a shame to ruin everything, but we need to talk," she said. "First question. Who brought you home last Friday night?" "Friend." "But what's the matter?" she asked. "Because I didn't know that Esha Faraji was classified as a friend," I said. "If you know the answer, why ask the question? Or should this be an interrogation, counselor?" she said, pulling away a little. We were lying cheek to cheek, and now I turned to look at her. This is not an interrogation, but the question is better formulated this way. Why do you come home after midnight with such a scoundrel as Faraji? First of all, he is not a scoundrel. He is an excellent surgeon and friend of Claire Hudson. He offered to give us both a ride and accidentally dropped her off first. There was a connection in the back of my mind that would be important later. But for now, I said, and the fact that he accidentally got into your pants. "Well, finally, here it is," she said. "What?" "The lack of trust, the criticism that existed but was not expressed, and the reason why you have been cold and distant since I returned home." "Are you blaming me?" She paused and took a deep breath. "Please, let's not quarrel. It's hard enough without anger. The point of this evening is to start leaving everything behind. Anna said to keep everything simple and with love. You caught me off guard with your question, but I have to remember that I'm married to a lawyer." "Who is this Anna?" I asked. "Anna Svensson from the hospital. I met with her about our problem and she suggested that we come to counseling together. But first I have to confess to you. She suggested that I first put you in a positive mood and remind you of our common love. Anna is a psychiatrist, short and strong," I said. "Yes, she is very good and has experience in such situations." "Situations? Jimmy, my love, please. Now, for our sake, stop playing lawyer. I realized we had a problem as soon as I got off the plane. You have your suspicions. I saw them in your face and felt them in your kiss." "Okay, but don't blame me," I said. "I won't. This is a very big problem for us and I admit my guilt. But we need to work together to solve it," she replied. "How can we do this?" "I have to get the problem out first," she said and paused to kiss me before coming down on me. I closed my eyes silently as she began to speak. I was ready for hardships, humid heat, lack of sanitation, and endless bugs. Spiders are the size of a fist. The terrible food was not a heavy burden. You will lose several kilograms. So what? In such an incredible way, you help people who need it so much. It was the greatest adventure of my life, and every day brought more and more new achievements. The suffering I saw is beyond description, but the feeling you get from relieving that suffering is beyond anything imaginable. But the endless daily horror eventually wears you down. The Rwandan-backed rebels make no distinction between combatants and aid workers. Government troops cannot be relied upon. They can be no less dangerous than the rebels. It's hard to tell who, if anyone, is on your side. We were losing people. Friends died in the crossfire. Men and women captured at night. Some we later found, raped, tortured, and killed. She paused, looking at me. Simone's eyes looked at me, seeking sympathy and understanding. I hugged her and said, "You knew about it. I warned you before you left." "I know," she said, "but it is impossible to know horror until you are faced with it, or how great the need for strong hands is until they are around. I desperately needed you, but you were far away," she said, burying her face in my chest. Sighing, she began again. Leroy was a tall, handsome black man. He was a Chicago native and a paramedic. I met him on the first day of my stay in Katanga. Leroy had been at camp long enough to know the ropes. He was trying to keep an eye on the new girl from New York. Of course, Leroy wanted to get into my pants and flirted indecently. Many of our work colleagues had intimate relationships. Partly it was a physical need, but mostly it was a feeling that death could come tomorrow. I held back. I was married and knew that my husband would not betray me. Why did I have to betray him? Because I was scared and lonely. Laura was a black nurse from Atlanta. She was my neighbor in the tent. There were 12 countries represented on the medical staff alone, but I tried to stick to the Americans. I became close to Laura. One day she and her team left for a facility located 5 miles from our main facility and never returned. 2 days passed before their burnt car was found. They found what was left of the men, but not of the women. Laura simply disappeared, never to return. It could have been me in her place. I fell into Leroy's arms that night, and for the next 5 months, I was his companion in every way. The day Leroy went home, I met with Jared, a doctor from Los Angeles. I slept with Jared the morning I left. Before you ask, it wasn't just sex. It was something more, but it was only a temporary relationship. My time with Leroy and Jared was a matter of time and place. We did not exist in the world outside the Democratic Republic of Congo. "Please tell me you understand," she concluded. I understood. I didn't like it, but I understood what happened. She lay in my bed, completely covering me. Despite her height of 1.78 meters, she was small and fragile. I loved her very much, but at that moment, I also hated her. She had betrayed me in so many ways, and now I just felt stupid. "Say something," she demanded. What should I say? What will help us make things right again? Anna says that we should go through a consultation together. He says that if we work on this together, we can fix everything. "You will go?" she asked. I pulled away from her and got out of bed. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "I'll go to counseling, but right now I need to stay away from you," I said and left the bedroom. When I left, she cried. Continued, "So the law school career office said I should ask for $25 an hour," Rebecca Flynn said. She was the final applicant for the summer intern position I posted at the law school, and she was the only one worth considering. Rebecca was local but went to Cornell. Without wasting any time, she told me that she had been included in the legal review and had received a summer job offer at a well-known Manhattan firm. Her plans for a summer internship in a big city were disrupted by circumstances. Her father had a heart attack, and Rebecca chose her father over her career. I like that, and also that she comes from a middle-class family. She needed summer income to finance her final year of law school. 3 months have passed since my appointment as special prosecutor. Tara did the work of searching and identifying targets. I, on the contrary, was mainly engaged in analyzing the remaining cases. I needed to free myself for what lay ahead. Now, I was ready for the next steps. 25 an hour was what colleges were asking for summer interns. I wasn't sure of the motivation for this. No one except large firms could pay such wages, and few firms of any size hired employees. The average single person, like myself, will work 60 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, to earn $60,000. Do the math yourself. 60,000 divided by 3,000 hours, and you get $20 an hour. The second-year interns wanted to earn more than the owners. I offer $17.50 an hour, I said. Oh, she said disappointedly, but I'll offer you a deal. 25 for each billable hour and 15 for all non-billable hours. She looked at me cheerfully, as if I was trying to deceive her. In her opinion, all hours are billable. Oh, the naivety of youth. However, in this case, my trick was planned to enrich both of us. I intended to bill the state for her services at $125 an hour, receiving $100 each time she billed a billable hour. That was the beauty of having the governor as my client. The downside to this situation was that the governor was the client, or more specifically, Miss Wilson. I had already been working as a special prosecutor for 3 months, and she had been on my tail since the end of the first week. The governor would like to receive a progress report, Miss Wilson wrote to me. I just started working, and she already wants results. Sorry, independent prosecutor. I'll make a report at the end, I answered. The next day she called. The governor would like to receive monthly bills, she said. The usual is in 60 to 90 days, I answered. Not if the appointing authority decides that monthly bills are necessary, Carrie Wilson said, in her most authoritative voice. I suspected that one of the older, more experienced employees had told her how to monitor what I was doing. To get paid, my accounts had to show normal and necessary activities and, moreover, be detailed enough to reveal what I did. Moreover, if she wanted, she could question each entry and demand an explanation as to why it was needed. In other words, she could track my every move through billing. Do you require monthly billing? I asked. Yes, I demand it. That is, the governor demands. I liked her. She was smart enough to be wary of me, and, like me, she felt that something was wrong. By this time, I had read all the documents in the Corrections Commission's voluminous file, and I was sure that Miss Wilson had too. This didn't add up to a good case against anyone. Politically, it's a disgrace for the governor, but nothing more. I made some casual inquiries about Carrie Wilson. She studied at Yale and Wellesley. I recently graduated from the Faculty of Law, but was not allowed to practice. The governor, no doubt, kept her too busy to take the bar exam. She turned down a clerkship in the 2nd District to work for the governor and was one of many who hoped to follow him to the White House. She was the daughter of the Wilsons of Westchester. Dad was a Wall Street representative, and Mom belonged to the DeVoe Society. They were the old New York elite. Carrie was rich and well-connected. Not my type at all, and she didn't trust me at first sight. However, I couldn't blame her for the latter. Okay, I accept, Rebecca said, interrupting my thoughts. Fine. You start on Wednesday, I said. We were in my 3rd month as special prosecutor, and I had nothing to show for it yet, as Ms. Wilson had repeatedly said. However, we had a lead. Tara's friend, a feminist lawyer, showed us a way through the silent wall of prison guards. There was an officer in Van Patten Prison, Robert LeBach. He was a completely ordinary person, except for one small fact. Bob was going through a divorce from his second wife. The couple had 2 children, but none together. Bob was a bit of a squirrel. He saved every spare coin, and the current Mrs. LeBach wanted her share. The only obstacle to divorce was money, and the fight became bitter. Bob could account for all assets except the $5,000 cash he withdrew. It was an operation he couldn't, or more likely, didn't want to explain. We received a wiretap warrant, which was supposed to appear at the end of the month. But for now it was a secret known only to the judge, Tara, and me. My new secretary will have to rummage through the prison archives while I focus on what really interests us. Hopefully the suspects and Miss Wilson will be fooled by each other. My personal life has progressed no further than my investigation. Simone and I went to consultations with Anna Svensson twice a week. The first few sessions were aimed at proving that Simone had committed a crime and was deeply repentant. Anna was quite strict with my wife, but this was done in order to show how impartial she was. Consultations quickly turned into an intricate dance. Simone asked for forgiveness, I had to forgive her, and then we would have to go through the process of rebuilding our relationship. Unfortunately, I'm stuck on the forgiveness part. Anna finally brought up the issue. It's not just about infidelity, Jim, is it? She asked. No, I think the problem is broader, I answered. Then tell me what's wrong, Simone demanded. You abandoned us, the girls and me, and you will do it again, I said. How can you say that? Asked Simone. Let's try to figure it out. Feelings are what they are, Anna warned Simone. This was more than 2 months ago, and we still couldn't figure it out with each other. I became increasingly convinced that counseling would not help. Sex also disappeared. We grew more and more distant from each other. I was hurt, and she was angry, and more every day. Simone believed that I should accept her apology and that we should move on with our lives. I didn't see how an apology could help. Dances to benefit pediatricians took place on the last Saturday of June. The dance was chaired by Simone Redmond, the new director of pediatric services at Memorial Hospital. My wife took back her maiden name. I found out about this after seeing the invitations. The co-chair was Dr. Esha Faraji. For this occasion, I wore a rented tuxedo. There was no mistaking the origin of my formal attire, nor could I ignore the comparison with my wife, who looked like $1 million in her skimpy black dress. She was the star of the evening. Aside from the handsome Dr. Faraji, who monopolized my wife as his dance partner. The only one who seemed least upset by Faraji's attentions to my wife was her friend Claire, who was accompanied to the event by her husband. But Deck seemed only a temporary guest. Claire was dressed to the nines, too sexy for a mother of 3. However, who am I to object? My wife was dressed like a single woman on the hunt. Their hip, high-end styles made Faraji and Caruso look like seedy wannabes. Deck and I couldn't compete, and it was obvious that no one, including our wives, was paying the slightest attention to us. There was an exception. Anna Svensson found me. How are you, Jimmy? Anna asked. It couldn't be better, I replied. My dad always said that it's better to hold salt in an open hand, she said. I'll remember this the next time I hold salt. She loves you and he has no chance, Anna said. It's true, but it's fundamentally wrong, and we both know it. My first visit to Van Patten Penitentiary was long overdue, but I knew that I would not find the answer to my question there. However, in the first week of July, I went to the prison and made the required call to the warden. The prison was little more than a collection of residential buildings surrounded by a 3-meter 6-centimeter high fence topped with razor wire and a winding steel band, decorated every few centimeters with a bow of metal blades. An internal fence divided the facility into 4 sectors. I headed to the administrative office, but first I had to go through the main gate. It was nothing more than a square concrete box, 6 meters on a side, divided in half by metal detectors. There were 3 guards at the gate, 2 men and 1 woman. At first they were cold, but they became even colder when I identified myself. I was taken through a metal detector, detained, and searched. 20 minutes later, I was walking along the path to the administration building. The superintendent's office was a short walk from the building's entrance. Her secretary was waiting for me at the door and showed me the way. The superintendent's office was spacious but tastefully furnished. The furniture was Corecraft brand, ugly prison furniture that was legally only sold to the government. Superintendent Camilla Blake was a woman of average height and about 50 years of age. She had graying dark hair and was dressed in a blue-gray formal suit that would not have been out of place for a school principal. She had an attractive but stern face with severe features. She stood up from the table to greet me and led me to a small conference table. The furnishings of the room were complemented by her table and a small sofa with chairs. The conference table was small, but large enough to seat 8 or so people. As we sat down at the table, I noticed that her face was familiar to me, although I could not remember having ever met her. "I was glad to hear that you were appointed," she began. "We happen to know each other. My grandchildren go to school with your daughters." Prompted by this, I remembered where I had seen her before. Her daughter was a tall, fair-haired woman, and her son and daughter, it seemed to me, were older than my two. "I thought I knew you," I said. "Yes, your daughters are beautiful, like your wife. She, of course, evokes my admiration and the admiration of my employees, especially the medical staff. We use Memorial Hospital, where your wife works, for external medical care for our inmates. Your wife is a wonderful woman. You must be very proud of her." "Yes, I'm proud, just like our daughters." "We are a happy family," I answered. "As I already said, I welcome your appointment to this position. We are one family here, and, like your wife, we serve a humanitarian purpose. Our occupation is not highly valued, but it is beneficial. You, as I understand it, are a good person whose character comes from within. You don't wear it like a mantle to judge others," she said. "Well, you regard my merits as more than I deserve. There is no need to attribute to me the good deeds of my wife. I have a job here, and I will perform my function to the best of my ability, which may cause some pain," I said. "I judge you by the care that I saw you show towards your daughters. All I ask is that my people be treated impartially and understandingly," she said. "I fully intend to be fair and impartial to both your staff and the inmates of this facility. I think highly of Van Patten Penitentiary, as does my wife. She often talks about how dedicated your medical staff is. I think people are often surprised by the medical care provided to prisoners. I know this is not always an easy task. Women prisoners, in particular, often need more routine services that only outside medical staff can provide," I said. "Yes, an insightful observation. Our internal women's health services are adequate, but gynecological and surgical services are provided externally," admitted the superintendent. "Memorial is not the largest hospital in the area, but it provides adequate care for our women." I missed the word adequate, and didn't realize that Regional Medical Center had much more capacity than Memorial. "Well, let's move on to the reason for my visit. To assist in the investigation, I hired a legal secretary, a young law student. I will send her here for preliminary investigation. She would need a place to work and would review certain records, mainly records of staff assignments and hours, and records of inmate housing. I know you may be strict about protocol and make it difficult to gather the information we need, but I hope we can work in tandem to get things done quickly. You will have my full cooperation in releasing anything that is not protected by the law, and as for closed documents, we will identify them so that you can get a subpoena," she said, and I could see that she was relieved that I was taking action. In such a casual and humble manner. I did not feel the slightest guilt that she misjudged my character or was unaware of the actual method of my investigation. While I seemed to be shuffling papers, Tara was eavesdropping on the conversations of her employees. Like any other successful prosecutor, I intended, to the extent possible, to invade the privacy of her employees and induce them to turn against each other. I was selling my soul for the governor's gold, and by the time the superintendent and Miss Wilson realized this, I planned to have the goods on someone. It was Simone's turn to pick up the girls, but she texted me that she was taking them to their mother so we could spend the night alone. Something happened to my wife. When I returned home, there was no green lace, only an unhappy woman. "We need to talk," Simone began. "I thought that was what we were doing in our consultations with Anna," I said. "We've been married for 10 years, and we've been together even longer. I know you, Jimmy. You are not an open person. You have a cunning mind that loves to hide and deceive. It has never been easy for me to be your lover, knowing that I cannot fully penetrate this curtain that you hide behind. But I always knew your heart was true, and you were a wonderful husband and father, Simone said. I didn't know you felt that way about me, I said. You're not listening. I love you. You are a good man and husband. He took care of me and did everything for me. But you never allowed me to fully enter you. Anna is only now coming to the realization that you were not honest during our sessions. I know that's not true. Cheating comes naturally to you, but if we want to have any chance of healing the wound in our relationship, you have to be honest with me for once. What do you want me to say? Tell me what I can do to make you forgive me. I didn't mean to hurt you at all. Please, let's put this behind us. You can start by telling me about Ash Faraji, I said. Damn. What does he have to do with us? He's hunting you, and you're keeping him in suspense. A kiss here and there. What is this for? Okay. He's an attractive man and just my type. A woman needs a man. At least I do. My husband keeps me at a distance. So yes, I may have been holding it in reserve. I would let him steal a kiss or feel him, but I would never do anything else. He has no chance if my husband comes back to me, Simone said as tears began to wet her cheeks. I knew her as well as she knew me. After a moment, her nose started running, and she turned away to cry out her grief. It was only partly real. Simone was caught between grief and anger. She wanted all this behind her so she could return to her family without consequences for her actions. I wasn't afraid of Dr. Faraji. Yes, he was sexually attractive to my wife, but she was not the type of woman to be sexually attracted. I've seen her flirt with men before when she wanted something. The question was, what did Simone want from Faraji? With Simone, it took more than just agility and sexuality. She was looking for a man who could give her more. She wanted and needed a strong emotional connection. This is what failed her in Africa. This need to be with a man, to be in his arms and under his protection. She was such a strong woman, but still a woman. I've lived long enough to know that women crave male companionship, and sex is the smallest part of that craving. So what did her kiss with the doctor mean? Will you promise never to do this again, if we can restore our relationship? I said. Of course, she answered without hesitation. That means no more Doctors Without Borders or other humanitarian escapades, I said. What? You heard me. No more adventures away from your family. You are my wife, not the savior of the world. I saw the conflict within her, and I think that, perhaps for the first time, she was faced with a real choice. In the end, she must choose between her family and her calling. It was a choice between me and many, to be with one man or to serve humanity. Simone could return home, but this was not always and not forever. She intended to leave again, whether she voiced the fact or not. Simone didn't answer. She sat for a moment thinking, and then slowly stood up and headed towards the stairs. I gave her some time and then followed her. When I reached our bedroom, I found the door locked. I wasn't sure if this was the answer to my ultimatum or if she was still thinking about it. That night, I slept soundly on the living room couch. I made a decision. Tara was in my office early this morning. Her Cheshire cat grin indicated that the hunt was a success. She brought me one of those big striped bags that you can hide a directional microphone in. One of my people and I played a couple in love at the Whitetail Hotel. We had a booth in the back that gave us an unobstructed view of the bar room while we pretended to kiss. Bobby LeBach laid it all out, she announced with more glee than I'd seen from her since she left the police force. She placed the recorder on my desk and started recording. She set it to record the conversation. The bar was noisy, and LeBach began speaking in what he must have thought was a whisper, but sounded clear on the tape. LeBach: you have no choice. DNA will give you away even if she has a miscarriage, but what if she gives birth? Well, it wouldn't be that hard to figure out which African-American officer was doing it with a pretty white prisoner. Second voice: but the risk! I don't want to go deeper than I already have. In the end, she begged for it, and I paid for the pills. You all said it was safe. LeBach: it was safe, but accidents happen. And this is the final fix. You pay $5,000 for a doctor, and she goes on sick leave, complaining of post-menstrual cramps and continued bleeding. Doc will take care of the rest. Second voice. But what if everything goes wrong? Labak. Nothing will go wrong. And if it does, then for God's sake she will be in the hospital. It goes on like this, with the black guy whining for a while, but you get it, Tara said, turning off the recorder. Do we know who this black officer is? I asked my man to follow him home. This is Charles Washington, coming from New York. Currently lives alone in Latham. I'll have more information after we check him, she replied. Okay, document the recording and prepare an affidavit for a warrant to wiretap Officer Washington, I said. God, you're cool. That's a whole new can of worms, right? No. It's actually a hook that's been there since Stan Katsaros offered the bait that we took. I don't understand, Tara said. You'll understand. You'll barely know who Mrs. Katsaros sees as a gynecologist, I said, sending Tara off to do her duties. It wasn't exactly a guess. I knew Tara would look, but I didn't need it. Sometimes 1 + 1 is more than 2. For my part, I called my new secretary's cell phone and told her to check Officer Charles Washington's work assignments and bring me the name, age, and photograph of every white woman stationed in any unit where he worked. Start from today and work backwards. The sooner the better, I told the rather puzzled young law student. Then he issued a warrant to spy on Officer Washington, after which he called his good friend Deck Hudson and invited him to lunch. The Path 9. Diner is located south of town on the west bank of the river. It's not that far from Route 32 and the interchange. There are a lot of diesel vehicles passing by, and this is a good place for a driver to have lunch near his workshop. The diner is nothing like a traditional one. This is a large barn built from prefabricated sections. I was already sitting in the booth drinking coffee when Dake arrived. Glad you called, Jim. I just wanted to get together, Dake said, sitting down opposite me. When Dake sat down, the waitress was already there to take his drink order and tell him about the specials. She gave him a friendly, familiar smile. This was his home turf, and he felt comfortable, very relaxed, just like I wanted. It's been too long, I said, and I didn't want to be so upset with you the last time we spoke. It's a matter of situation. I know you and Claire were just trying to help. I take no offense. These are emotions. It takes a little getting used to, he said. How's Claire? Still working a lot? I asked. He gave me a slightly suspicious look, but quickly cast it aside and treated my words as something kind. Well, that's good money. Don't get me wrong, the shop does a good job, but we depend on it for all the benefits and a steady paycheck. The cost of running a small business these days is incredible, but you should know that, he said. Yes, you are right. With all those payroll taxes and insurance premiums and disability insurance and health insurance, there's not much left over, I said. Oh, don't forget about liability insurance, self-employment taxes, and sales taxes, he added. So that's why you let Claire have an affair with Esha Faraji? Because I never considered you a cuck, I said, dumping my suspicions on him. If I had any doubts, they were quickly dispelled. Dake froze, looking like I had hit him, and, perhaps, in some sense, it was so. But he came to his senses and tried to deny everything. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Come on, you understand everything. Claire, as my wife has always said, is the best surgical nurse in this part of the state. It was to be expected that Dr. Faraji, the head of surgery, would want her in his operating room while Simone was away. Faraji is a sexual maniac, and he's certainly not the kind of man who would turn down an attractive nurse. But you might be wondering who told me that Claire fell for his charms. Oddly enough, it was Claire herself, with the assistance of my wife. It's not what they said, but how they did it. First, when I asked Claire about Dr. Faraji, she was hesitant. Not much, I admit, but enough. Then Faraji drove my wife home very late and stole a kiss from her as she got out of his Porsche. I asked her why she was with Faraji, and imagine my surprise when she said that Claire had arranged the trip and drove home in the doctor's Porsche. It might have been an innocent trip with another man, but not with Faraji, and certainly not if you live 20 miles in the wrong direction. Dake looked a little puzzled, so I enlightened him. From the traffic police records, I found out who owns the Porsche and where the owner lives. Faraji did not drop your wife off at your house. He dropped her off at his condominium on the way to my place. He lives just a few miles from me. She spent the night with him while you were home with the kids. Dake hesitated for a minute and then said, "You have to understand. There's no way a guy like me can compete with a rich doctor. This guy has it all. Looks, money, and, I'm told, a big thing between his legs. All I have is bills and 3 boys to take care of. So, I looked the other way, and, well, Claire, she makes it worth it. They treat me well, and Ash, he won't be in the picture forever. I let her have her affair. So what? And you should know that he will come for your wife next. The question you have to ask yourself is, will fighting him get you anywhere? No man has yet been successful in a divorce if there are children. I can lose everything just like you," he finished. "You might be right, but then again, this game could have a funny twist," I said, just as the waitress brought our food. I asked her to pack a box for me and left Dake to eat in peace. I didn't expect Lisa to come into my office that day when I pressed Dake, but she did. "I have information about a fertility clinic," she began. "Oh, okay," I replied. "There are no obligations at the moment. They just want to test your seminal fluid as a potential donor." "No problem, but I'm busy, so the sooner the better." "Ready to become a mother?" I asked, smiling. "I think yes. I know how much I want to try." "But how will Simone cope with this?" "She'll be fine," I assured. "I hope things are getting better between you two. I know you love each other very much, and your girls need both of you so much," Lisa said. "You sound like you have some big problem," I said. Before answering, Lisa looked at her hands. "I got to know you better, Jim. You look just a little like your sister. Not as open and forgiving. It doesn't take a lawyer to figure out that there is a problem in your marriage, and the reason may only be a surprise to someone who is truly innocent of the way this world we live in works." When she finished, she raised her eyes and looked at me. "I've known for a long time that my sister is lucky. Lisa is not only beautiful in body and soul, but also amazingly smart in a completely feminine sense. She knew exactly what the problem was between me and Simone, and no one needed to tell her about it. Don't worry, everything will work out," I said. "I pray about this for Vicky and Beth's sake. I love them as much as I hope to love my own children, and I wouldn't want them to get hurt." I took the card she gave me for the clinic and placed it in the corner of my desk. "I'll call you as soon as possible," I said. "Thank you, and think about it, please. Think about what's best for your daughters before you do anything," she said. I didn't miss the double meaning and realized that she had come, in part, to beg me to forget about the problems with my wife for the sake of my daughters, whom she loved. Pollyanna Randell, a.k.a. Anna Rand, a.k.a. Anna Randy, a.k.a. Scarlet Randy, had brown hair and brown eyes. Her height was 1.57 meters. She had the sexuality of Marilyn Monroe and the innocent looks of a schoolgirl. She looked old enough to be in junior high school, although her prison file said she was 19. Rebecca, my lawyer, did a good job. She narrowed the number of possible candidates for the role of Officer Washington's mistress to just 3. I eliminated the remaining 2 candidates for purely male reasons. I was betting that it would be innocent Polly, as they preferred to call her. The girl had 2 convictions for obscenity, both related to her profession as a dancer. Her current sentence was for possession of a controlled substance, but her probation report stated she had not used it. She was caught for possession, but for whom it is unclear. This was the man she feared more than prison. "Do you understand these rights?" I asked. We sat in one of the rooms in the prison for meetings with the lawyer. I had Rebecca with me as a witness and a tape recorder for recording. I finished reading the angelic, beautiful Pollyanna her rights, a necessary precaution against what she might say. "Do you think I need a lawyer?" asked Polly. "Choose for yourself. But since you are a victim, I wouldn't think so," I said. At the word victim, her eyes trembled slightly. "No prisoner can consent to sex with one of his guardians," I explained. "Sex?" she asked. "If we're honest, we can get along much better," I said. "I just asked what you were talking about. Officer Washington and your pregnancy," I said, sharpening my voice. I saw that I shook her slightly. Do I need to request a compulsory urine test? I asked. She thought about it and apparently decided to give it up. What will happen to me for this? She asked. You have 2 years left until the end of your term. I think we can persuade the governor to commute the remaining sentence. I'll still get out in a year if I behave well. You need to do more. I was not only with Charlie Washington, and I can turn others over to you, said Pollyanna. More? I asked as my brain went into overdrive. Turn off the recorder and send the girl out of here, she said, grinning slyly. I hesitated, not wanting to be alone with this witch. I had no illusions. Behind the innocent face was an evil soul. What happened? Are you afraid of little me? She teased. I turned to Rebecca. Do you have a watch? No, I use the phone. It's taken away when I get to prison, Rebecca answered. Here, take mine, I said, handing her my wristwatch. The watch was good, although not very expensive. A gift from my wife when she was a fourth-year medical student. Simone worked extra shifts at the hospital to buy me this gift. I treasured this ancient way of telling time. Take your watch and go out for exactly 2 minutes, I told Rebecca. When the door closed behind my assistant, Pollyanna wasted no time in getting down to business. A big lawyer like you probably knows someone who could help me find a good home for my child, she said, placing one hand on her stomach. I was not embarrassed by the sudden concern for a child for whom she was ready to abort. What type of help are you looking for? Well, assistance in private adoption with a suitable couple. A rich, suitable couple? Preferably rich. A mixed-race child might not be so desirable, I said. She laughed. Charlie Washington thinks too highly of himself. I have some top candidates. It was just easier to blame him, she said. Okay, you leave early, and I'll find a lawyer for a private adoption, I said. Okay, I'll tell you everything when I see the lawyer, she said. The deal was done. I asked the superintendent to place Pollyanna Randall under protective custody until I could complete the deal. The next step was to win over Washington and then Lubbock. As it turned out, it only took 2 heartbeats when Officer Washington read the Pollyanna statement and realized that his fellow officers were making him a scapegoat. Lubbock fell as soon as Washington turned everything on him. Lubbock gave me the man I really needed, but I knew that the words of an easily accessible girl and a dirty commander would not be powerful enough to destroy the real target. I needed a respected witness. I could see the displeasure on Superintendent Blake's face. We were in her office. She was sitting at her desk and I was standing. I think the agenda is clear, I said. But do you need medical records? She answered, yes, and the order was signed by Judge Clement of the state court after I provided him with permission from each patient. My secretary, Rebecca, spent 2 weeks collecting these permits from current and former prisoners. The names were provided by Lubbock. The promises that Rebecca made in exchange for releases were up to me and the governor to keep. Some had their sentences reduced, others were put on the list for pardon consideration. But I had releases and a judge's order. Superintendent Blake knew where this was going, and she had probably already heard rumors that officers Lubbock and Washington were informing on their comrades. Camilla Blake sighed, shook her head, and picked up her office phone. 40 minutes later, her staff was laying out folders on the conference table, and I was giving orders to copy them. I took the originals and left the copies, watching the process carefully, even though I knew what I would find. The superintendent and her staff went about their work in silence. I took Tara and 2 of her employees with me to help ensure the safety of the records. The last thing I wanted was for the arrest to be disrupted now. In total, we carried 6 bank boxes with documents into Tara's truck. Now everything depended on the next step. I saw that my sister was still skeptical. Don't trust your brother? I asked. She was driving the car and I could look at her face while she looked at the road. It looks like a lot depends on what the accomplice testifies, Tara said. We know how it worked, and this will help. We know that the gynecologist sent women to the hospital for treatment. Each patient was seen by the same physician, and the same nurse was assigned and signed her name on each appointment. Yes, but without a nurse, You only have the words of the criminals that they were pregnant, and the doctor changed this condition. These records tell a completely different story. Do you think the jury won't believe the doctors? I'm counting on the nurse, I said. Do you understand these rights? I asked Claire Hudson. Jimmy, why are you doing this to me? Claire demanded. I had the county sheriff's highway patrol arrest her on her way to work. He put his wife's best friend in a prison cell for several hours, and then left her in the interrogation room for another 2. I knew by this time she was scared, and hopefully ready to talk. You committed crimes, I said. What? You can't believe it. You helped perform illegal abortions and falsified records. Why would you say that? I have notes with your signature. Your name and Faraji's name are on all operational cards. So this is a common procedure and abortion is legal in this state. But not when it is done without consent. No one was forced. The women were prisoners in prison and could not freely give consent. If you didn't know it was wrong, why did you hide it? I'm just a nurse. I'm following the instructions. The head nurse, without whose help the whole scheme collapses. You forgot that I know the rules of your hospital. They needed your help with medical procedures and your signature on the protocols confirming what was done. I know that what you said they did and what actually happened are not the same thing. You covered for Kuroso and Faraji, but mostly Faraji, who was your lover. You can't prove all this, she said, but without conviction. I showed her the testimony I collected from the officers and prisoners. That was all I needed. She broke down and started crying. Declan admitted to me that you were Faraji's lover. You really did this to him. No, you don't understand. We didn't actually harm anyone. Dec loves me. He understood everything. The women needed help. Ash was simply doing Tony Kuroso a favor. Read the testimony. They received money under the table to hide evidence of rape. Claire put her head down on the table and just cried her eyes out. Tara was waiting for me to play the role of the good cop. I handed Claire over to her, and she extracted a statement from her that Kuroso and Faraji roasted. Their scheme had to seem reliable and safe. Who would doubt that a doctor treats his patient? Women simply came to the hospital complaining about women's problems, and the authorities were forced to send them to a gynecologist who worked under a contract with the government. This doctor was Kuroso. If he said she needed surgery, no one could challenge his decision. Faraji performed the operation with the help of nurse Claire Hudson, who he seduced. Kuroso and Faraji were running a double business. One transaction they received money from the government, and the other in cash under the table. It seemed like a small scheme at first, but by the time Claire finished speaking, it had become much bigger. Abortions were not the only service provided. They treated sexually transmitted diseases, prescribed birth control, and covered up any and all evidence of illicit sex. I was naive enough to believe that this was all there was to it, but live and learn. I returned home late. There was a lot of work to be done in presenting the case to the grand jury. It looks so easy on TV, but in real life it requires preparation. The first problem is to assemble a jury if there is none. Smaller counties do not have a standing grand jury. Jury assignment can be a significant administrative process. But Stan Katsaros had the jury already drawn, as if he was only waiting for me. And of course he was. When I arrived, Simone and the girls were already having dinner. Simone made soup and bought fresh bread from the bakery. I took my seat and listened to my daughters discuss their day. From the wife's side, an eerie silence reigned at the table. I knew that by now she must have known that I had arrested Claire, but she did not mention it in front of our daughters. Simone put the girls to bed and, unusually, read them bedtime stories. I was in the small room downstairs that we use as an office. It's basically Simone's place, but I was sitting there trying to figure out my schedule for the next few weeks. They will be stressful for me. I thought about what Carrie Wilson would do when she saw my latest set of temp records. She wanted action. Now she will get it in full. "Why would you do something so cruel?" Simone asked from the doorway. "Just doing my job," I answered without even looking at her. "My job? Claire and Dake are our best friends, and she was just doing her job. She's a nurse, damn you. She covered for her lover, Eshe Faraji, and helped him in the crime, which makes her an accomplice. Are you crazy? She is our friend, a nurse who performed routine medical procedures. I cannot discuss this further. Is this some kind of revenge? She demanded. No, at least not from my side. I have been tasked with prosecuting those who sexually exploit prisoners in prisons, and that is exactly what I do. Arresting my friends. Yes, because they turned out to be criminals. You say that, and I hope for a grand jury. This effectively ended the discussion, and she left. We didn't talk for the next 2 weeks, but I hardly noticed it because I was busy. It was the evening before I was to begin presenting my case to the grand jury. I spent the whole day collecting evidence. Returning home late, I asked Lisa for time off, who was kind enough to come and take care of my daughters. Thank you, I said to Lisa, making sure the girls were asleep. She was sitting in my living room watching the end of an old Hollywood tearjerker on TV. Tears were streaming down her face. Turning to me, she wiped them away with the back of her hand. I don't usually feel this bad, she said. It's because of the drugs. I have an insemination scheduled for the end of the week. I will use you as a donor for fertilization if you still agree with it. I would be honored and I will pray for your success, I said, kissing her wet cheek. I hope this doesn't make your problems with Simone worse, she said, grabbing her coat and heading for the door. No, my problems have nothing to do with you. I'm really sorry. You were the happiest couple I knew. I will pray that everything works out for you. It seems like two good people should be able to forgive each other, she said. I walked her out the door, thinking about what she had said last. The scandal engulfed both the hospital and Simone's associates. I was the instrument of this scandal. This will hurt my wife, but I didn't do anything that I should have apologized for. I was not Sister Teresa, ready to forgive the officials who raped me. I sought to punish the guilty. This was what the governor appointed me to do, and more importantly, this was what I was paid to do. However, deep down I knew that there was one aspect of this matter that had nothing to do with good and evil, guilt and innocence. Tomorrow I would, with luck, convince a jury to indict 2 doctors, a nurse, and half a dozen corrections officers. It may come later, but the start will make for a good scandal that will make the local news, and hopefully please the governor, various interest groups, and Carrie Wilson. My wife didn't get home until around midnight and looked tired. By then I was lying in bed reading a book because I was too excited to fall asleep. She took a shower and climbed into bed. She leaned towards me and turned off the light. I thought this was a signal that she wanted to sleep, but I was wrong. She slid down my torso and pulled my shorts down. We had sex until 2 o'clock in the morning, but she didn't say a word. She was a sexy tigress. There was no love in it, only sex. When she finished, she rolled over to her side of the bed and fell asleep. Thomas Everett Parker Jr. was a tall, distinguished man of about 50. He was a prominent lawyer in the area. Parker was known for his outstanding performance in court and his melodic baritone voice. He was the son of Thomas Everett Parker Sr., who was a local bar legend until his death. Younger and alive. Parker was Dr. Kuroso's lawyer. In just 2 days, I was able to get the grand jury to give me all the indictments I asked it for. The first result of this was a call from Tom Parker asking for a meeting. A brilliant lawyer and his well-dressed client took seats in my modest conference room for the plea negotiations I assumed were about to take place. Parker began to outline my case and what he considered the doctor's impeccable character. In Parker's opinion, Kuroso was a saint in helping poor women with their reproductive rights. When Parker fell silent, Kuroso began his speech. The doctor gracefully, although rather rehearsed, asked for mercy. I saw the lawyer and client defeat my secretary, Rebecca, who was present at the meeting. "Excuse me," I said. "I have an indictment in 3 criminal cases and I see no reason to ignore them." I didn't say that Kuroso was a greedy ladies' man who didn't have the brains to stay away from the DA's wife, but that would be cruel, and it would lead them to believe that I know what set these strange events in motion. Kuroso looked at Parker, who raised his eyebrows and shrugged as if to say, "I told you so." Caruso nodded to Parker, and the lawyer began to speak almost in a whisper. "My client has something to trade." "Trade?" "He might give you an indictment against someone more important," Parker said. My thoughts turned to the warden, but I was far from the truth. "I can hand over Commissar Abruzzo to you," said the doctor. I hoped I hid the surprise I felt, as well as the anticipation. I turned to Parker and asked, "It is legal? And how serious?" The lawyer presented the alleged information vaguely but convincingly. It appears that Caruso paid for an assignment to monitor the health of inmates at Van Patten Penitentiary. The appointment cost $100,000 a year for what amounted to no more than 3 days a month. The kickback was $20,000 a year. Additionally, it was implied that Caruso would ensure that no unwanted children were brought into the world who could not be accounted for. My business just rocketed into the stratosphere, and everything finally made sense. The missing piece I knew was out there had finally arrived, and I was now enlightened. Parker saw right through me, and I wondered how much he understood. The deal we eventually struck allowed Caruso to avoid prison, but he pleaded guilty to a felony. The doctor will lose his license, but will get it back by the time he completes 3 years of probation. He left my office happy. When they left, I was still stunned and slightly depressed at my own naivety. Rebecca had a different opinion. "Wow, I thought this summer would be boring," she said. "I learned more than I did in my entire time in college." "Well, don't be too happy. We just have more work to do." I made a new schedule. I called Tara and told her about the new development in our investigation, and then went home. I needed to rest in a quiet place and think about what had just happened. Simone's car in the driveway told me she was home in the middle of the day. There was no second car. Despite the way things were between us, I expected that I wouldn't catch anyone in the act, but I discovered that my wife was packing her things. "Were you going to tell me you were leaving?" I asked. She jumped slightly, not expecting to see me at this time of day, but went back to packing her suitcase. "Yes, of course," she said. "I was going to tell Vicky, Beth, and you tonight." "Can I ask why?" "There is a new outbreak of Ebola in Nigeria. I got a call at work. They need all the help they can get." "Okay, new question. Why you?" "Do not be like that. I have to go. If not me, then who?" "Maybe someone without a family who needs it." She laughed and turned to face me. "We both know that girls don't want me when they have you and you don't want me." "My daughters need a mother," I said. "No, they have a super dad. In the big world, he is a real asshole. But at home, he is everything the girls need. The problem is that he has a wife who no longer fits in his house. So it will be better for everyone. Maybe the next time I get home, we can put everything back together." "So that's all? You are leaving?" "Yes, but I need a favor. I want to take Claire with me. Can you negotiate for her to be released so she can do what God put her on this earth to do?" "I think this can be arranged. This may take several weeks." "Thank you." Angie's is one of many restaurant-bar combinations that line Western Avenue near the government and university campus. Mike Tillman, chairman of the Commission of Corrections, sat in a booth in the far corner. It was already well past lunchtime for most government employees, so the place was relatively empty. When I asked to meet, Mike invited me to lunch. He chose the time and place. The atmosphere was relaxed, where the civil servant was not out of his element. This maintained the illusion that the independent commission and the independent prosecutor were not actually colluding. At this point, if we met officially, people might get the wrong impression. Some might suspect that everything that happened was a setup, but no one would express their suspicions without solid evidence. "The chicken parmesan sandwich is good, but get the onion rings, not the fries," Mike said as I sat down at the table. As I took my seat, a bored waitress was called over, and I took Mike's recommendation and placed my order. "And coffee," I said, handing the menu to the waitress. "So, what did you want to talk about?" Mike began as soon as the girl left. "Well, I really only have one question," I said, trying to look him straight in the eyes. Mike just smiled at my attempt to control the conversation. "Only one?" Yes, I understand perfectly well that I played the role of a pawn in this game. Nests cake, not pawns. At least a horse. Maybe not white at night, but still a horse. A figure of speech for the party being manipulated, I said. Now I'm curious. How do you see that you are being manipulated? Mike said with a smile that let me know he already knew the answer. Stan Katsaros is a man who is 20 years older than his wife. This is something that can make a man nervous, especially a not very attractive short Greek lawyer married to a very beautiful lady. But when he's the district attorney and he suspects his wife of infidelity, he has a lot of resources at his disposal, I said, watching Mike closely. He just nodded for me to continue. So, when Stan found out that his wife was having an affair with a gynecologist, he was upset. But when he found out that the gynecologist deals with prisoners, he had a very big problem. He solved crimes within his jurisdiction, but did so through illegal surveillance. He got caught. If he acted on what he knew, he would be accused of abuse of power, not to mention exposed as a cuckold. On the other hand, what if it turns out that he knew and did nothing? Interesting problem, Mike said. Yes, very much. But the solution is even more interesting. You see, Stan knows someone who can conduct an investigation that doesn't require much evidence or even explanation. An agency created just for this purpose. So naturally, Stan took his information to where it could be used. Problem solved, Mike said. But, I said. But, Mike asked. Well, the man he saw had his own plans, a little revenge for being passed over. And this man knew something that Stan didn't. For example, how the doctor got his job and how the system works, I said. I haven't heard the question yet, he replied. Why me? You could choose. Why choose an obscure lawyer with a less than stellar reputation to blow up the Department of Corrections? Mike grinned widely and said, Jimmy, you still don't understand. As I said, a horse. The kind of guy who will fight 3 frat guys to save a drunk co-ed, but fight as dirty as possible. A guy with a beautiful wife who was molested by asshole doctors. A damn shrewd freak of a lawyer who wants nothing more than to be pointed in the right direction. He paused as the waitress brought the food. When she left, he continued, The good guys won here. Stan will get his wife back and good revenge. The governor gets the opportunity to clean up the state's largest agency and install his people, and you get a good salary. Of course, if you were less efficient, you would get more, but I'm sure no one will complain if you take your time a little at the end. What will you get, Mike? The pleasure is that those freaks who stuck a knife in my back and pushed me away went down. Plus the gratitude of the public and the current governor, he said, very pleased with himself. And when the storm passes, when Abruzzo's friends come out from under the stones? I asked. By that time I will no longer be alive, and you, as you said, will be a little-known lawyer. We have nothing to worry about. I was not convinced of the latter. Politicians have long memories, and we have lost a significant piece of the patronage pie. But the food was excellent, and Mike's company was good, even though he was a son of a bitch. After lunch, I headed back to the office, knowing that I had been taken advantage of, but at least understanding why. I was sitting at the bar in the ballroom of the Gideon Hotel. It was the annual meeting of the Defenders Bar Association. It goes without saying that my short stint as a special prosecutor did not win me any friends in the defense bar. I was avoided like the outcast that I was. Would you like to buy the lady a drink? Asked a female voice. I turned around and saw Carrie Wilson standing behind me. I didn't know there were ladies here. I thought there were only lawyers here. Is this what is considered humor among special advocates? She asked. Well, we try to smile if we can. Poor Jimmy. He lost all his friends by putting people in jail. This is not entirely accurate. Abruzzo got probation, and I had to clear Dr. Curoso, Claire Hudson, and most of the officers, I said. Looks like the only fish you caught was Dr. Faraji, the least guilty of them all, she accused. Can I have a drink now? She was drinking a gin and tonic, and, glass in hand, led me to an empty table. The governor thinks we should let Faraji go, she said. Why? Like I said, he's not that guilty, and it seems a little unfair. and like he's being punished for something other than unauthorized procedures. She raised her eyebrows. I knew what everyone was talking about. My wife fled to Africa at the height of the scandal. It was no secret that Dr. Faraji was after her. Some said Simone and Faraji were having an affair. The truth of these rumors did not matter because there was plenty of suspicion. And what? I heard your wife returned to Africa. Yes, it's been about 3 months now. It must be difficult to be married. I had to laugh. You know this is true, because we now live separately, according to the law. So, make a deal with Faraji, stop this scandal, and come to dinner with me, she said. Have supper? Carrie Wilson was offering me a way out. By letting Faraji go, the governor got what he wanted. The powers that be will not object to the fact that my prosecution did not actually result in anyone being imprisoned. Yes, have dinner. Are the special prosecutors eating? Perhaps I am not the best company for an assistant governor. Oh, you can handle it. You're a state university snob who looks down on Ivy League graduates, but you look good, and besides, I'd like to hear who the father of your sister's wife's baby is, she said with a charming smile. Lisa was pregnant. While showing me the ultrasound, Tara said the baby was a boy. The newly married couple was very happy, but there were rumors about the child's father. How do I know that I can trust you with such confidential information? I asked. She laughed and replied, because I'm not a lady, I'm a lawyer. Then, taking my hand, she led me out into the cold December night. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.